Hey folks, so what we are going to do is we are going to drive the 2020 Hyundai Tucson through the mountains, and we're ultimately going to develop an impression of it as we go. As you guys can see, you are sitting on my head. You are not on a camera in front of the steering wheel, so we're going to be able to see a little bit more in terms of how the vehicle behaves and how ultimately it performs, and you'll be able to see a better way of it as it won't be shaky. So the only shakiness you will see is what actually intrudes into the cabin. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do our uphill test first, and then we get to the crest and go downhill, and you'll be able to see how this performs. So this is the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder engine, and it does an overall good job, but it's not fast by any means. The 2.0 will definitely struggle a lot harder, and if you have the all-wheel drive system, which this vehicle does not, you will notice that the vehicle's gas mileage from it will look terrible, and two, it'll just feel a lot more sluggish. This vehicle is equipped with grade logic, so if I do take my foot off the gas, it will not upshift after 4th gear, and that is due to the fact that we don't want to have a bunch of transmission heat. Torque converter does stay engaged, and it ultimately just makes it easier to accelerate. In a stick shift, you probably would be in the same situation. You wouldn't shift all the way up to the highest gear in this particular scenario. Whoops. So as you can see, it does struggle a little bit with hills, but it doesn't do it horribly. It's normal. Had this had a CVT, it probably would be a little bit better in terms of ratios, but the 6-speed on this is pretty sufficient to get the job done. Lane keep assist surprisingly is very helpful in this particular situation, not in regular driving. As you can see, it's starting to tell me that I need to get over, and it will do so by fighting me a little bit with the wheel. And it does a good job in keeping it in the center of the lane, but yeah, it's ultimately up to the driver to drive this correctly. So, very smooth turns, very smooth ride overall. It does a decent job at absorbing the road, and it also does a decent job of avoiding body roll, as this is an issue actually more in the Subarus. You get a lot of body roll when you're going over these bends. Some people find the suspension stiff, however, I find it sometimes to be a little too loose, but it just depends probably on which Subaru you actually get. So already the car is helping me. As you can see, when that light blinks, it will start to turn the wheel. So it is doing a good job at keeping me in the center of the lane. We are starting now the downhill process of this drive. I don't want to make it too long, but I want to give you guys a good impression. And as we're speeding up, you will, see the fact that this car actually handles these roads pretty well at high speeds, despite it being just a non-athletic, boring, traditional SUV. Does an overall really decent job. Went up a hill a little bit there. I'm also driving a little more aggressively for you aggressive folk. Some people will be a little lighter on the throttle when we're doing these kind of situations, but I feel it's important to show you that this thing can handle a little bit of play here and there. The steering is not the most fun by any means. It definitely is pretty lackluster when you get it to those higher speeds and when you're going through here, but it does respond really well. It's not like you have to turn the wheel far to get it to respond, unlike older SUVs such as the 97 Expedition that's on my channel. As you can see, another uphill portion. Did fatigue a little bit. We did talk about that non-athleticism that the car ultimately exhibits, but doesn't do too bad. This engine can handle it. They fixed the short block problem, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue. But yeah, handling this at higher speeds, you definitely can handle places like Big Bear and places with really windy roads, such as areas in Northern California, this thing will do just fine. There's really no big issue with it, per se. Holds its ground. The transmission does go back and forth between gears a little bit, but that's normal. But it doesn't gear hunt, per se. It does a really good job at keeping its gear and knowing it needs to stay in it until it's safe to shift up. So yes, you will be running at higher RPMs, but do understand that the gearbox is also trying to protect itself. And as you can see, now we're going downhill, and even the gearbox is like, we need to slow you down a little bit, so it did downshift to 5th gear there. And now it just went up to 6th. So this is equipped with grade logic both up and downhill to really help you when it comes down to it. As you can see, it just did it again. And for those of you guys that do like to play with the gearbox a little bit, you can put it in manual mode and shift up and down. Just, you know, the car can do it too, so it's not that big of a deal. If you want to slap shift it, it's fine, but ultimately the car will take care of you. So we're actually on the way back from Lee Canyon, so we're going to descend Mount Charleston as well. I think this person literally pulled over because I was coming up too fast, but yeah. See, it's keeping me in my lane again, sort of. Tried its best there. And it can see that I'm approaching these turns rather quickly. So that's actually one thing I didn't notice, is that the lane keep assist kind of predicts the turn for you, so that's really cool. And I'm not the topher by any means, so if I do lean a little bit, I do apologize. But yeah, I really think this car's got a lot of potential. Despite it having the Hyundai badge, it does a really good job. It's not, doesn't feel unsafe. Tackles these winds very well, despite me going 60 miles an hour. It does a good job. Shift logic is keeping it in 5th gear. As I told you before, it will downshift as you're going downhill to help you ultimately slow down. And there you go, it just went up. So if you're in the market for a Tucson, and you know, you guys go outdoors a lot, you go camping, you do all that fun jazz, consider it. Because you can get the all-wheel drive models, and they drive really well. And the fact of the matter is, you know, you're not going to be going this fast. Some of you will. But you're not going to be going this fast. And if the car can handle it, the car can handle it. It's doing a really good job. It's stable. It's playful, but it's not fun, but it plays, if that makes sense. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most fun, sporty vehicle. Like, I don't need a Dodge Durango SRT 392 to ultimately have this kind of windy road fun, because this car does a great job. So I'd consider it. This is the last of this generation. The 2021 Tucson looks beautiful, and you will get an updated powertrain. If I'm not mistaken, it will have the 8-speed automatic instead of the 6, and you will get a turbocharged 4-cylinder. But if you guys are looking for a used vehicle, such as the 2016 to 2020, I'd say still definitely a good buy. Just remember though, the 2016 and 17s, they did come with that 1.6 liter with the 7-speed dual clutch that has been known to fail. So don't necessarily put too much trust in it. So we're going downhill most of it. So you guys saw in the beginning, it will struggle going uphill, but going downhill, no issues, obviously. Handles really well at high speeds. So basically a recap here is, it's a nice vehicle to have for utility purposes, but at the same time, for those of you guys that are starting a family, or let's say you're a couple and you guys like to go camping, and the Subaru was just out of the price range, the Tucson definitely will treat you relatively similarly. Okay, we're at the end of our downhill slope here. We can go a little bit more uphill before we head back into Vegas. And you can see that there are some struggles with it. Uphill part 2. So as you can see, going uphill, we are having a little bit of struggling going on. And it doesn't feel the same as downhill. Still does a decent job, however. Cabin noise is pretty limited. The car does a really good job of suppressing it. Despite the engine buzzing, it's still a little bit unrefined, but it's not horrible, unlike the older Hyundais, which definitely had a very throaty rumble with a mix of buzziness. This one doesn't have that. It's a lot quieter than before, and it is very refined in terms of road noise. There's not a lot of cabin intrusion. So if you do have smaller kids, the back seats do recline, and they can sleep pretty comfortably without having the engine or having the road just buzzing in their ear the whole time. It's a very quiet vehicle, despite it being a Hyundai. But at the same time, I drove a Honda in the past, so yeah, there was definitely times where I was like, whoa, this thing is silent compared to that, because the Accord that I had was just road noise galore. Like, the Hondas just have that issue with road noise, and it's been in their lineup for, good Lord knows how long. There's a downshift there. So the transmission's pretty good about keeping gears, but if you guys do have more gears, or if you have a continuous transmission, you definitely do have a better advantage over those with just merely 6 speeds. But do keep in mind the 6 speeds are very reliable in this car, so they won't overheat, but you can kind of beat on them a little bit compared to let's say Nissan. Sorry, Nissan owners, but I had to bag on the CVT. So yeah, can't really complain too much. I'm just gonna go ahead and figure out my life here. Alrighty, so we are going to actually end our drive and kind of go from there. A little bit off of off-roading, as you can see. Whoop-de-doo. I don't have all-wheel drive, so I'm not making that a priority on this in terms of off-roading. There are plenty of reviews and videos on YouTube for that. So I appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe. If you have any questions about the car, definitely go ahead and ask them. I definitely like to get to, for one, know the audience, and two, I also would like to learn from you as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope you guys all have a good one.